We got here. Seems like 6 months ago, and 6 minutes ago, and 10 years ago, that we were traipsing around the country for the UKIP leadership. Do you remember that, Alan?
Yeah.
I did a lot of traipsing as well. I'm sure a lot of us did. I couldn't be more proud. I couldn't be more pleased. Look at it. Look at the number of people in this room. Thank you. Seriously, thank you. It's been an amazing journey, and I am really, really excited about this. I really think we can do something here. I really do. And I even think we can do something now. I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't sneak one or two people in even. There's a real, and people are very generous with their vote around local elections. UKIP are gone. Labour is waiting for a kicking in the north of England, waiting for it. And the only reason I'm convinced of this, the only reason Labour is still the dominant force up here that it is because there isn't anyone else. There isn't anyone else. People won't vote for the Tories, and there just isn't anyone else. It's up to us now to fill that void. I'm overwhelmed, and I'm terribly grateful, and it's going to run away with us now. It's going to run away with us now. I'm delighted and excited and a little bit nervous about it all, but it's going to happen. It's going to happen. I thought I'd spend a bit of time this evening going through. I'm sure you're all familiar with this. In fact, I'm sure you're all sick of seeing this. That picture has to go. We need a new picture. It's on everything. It's on everything. And it was taken as a real fluke. It wasn't even meant to be. I was just out walking the dogs, actually, with a friend of mine who's a photographer, and she took that, and now it's everywhere. But these are going through letterboxes, I know, and thank you all. So I thought I'd spend a bit of time going through these 10 points and fleshing them out a little bit. And then when we've done that, I'll take a few questions. Just very briefly about the party, it's growing every single day. It's after these elections, and if you might have seen the YouTube webcast I did the other day, after these elections we're going to talk about a national structure. We have the right message. We have the right message. The timing is right. There is a shift. There's an appetite for change and for real difference in this country, as there is all over Europe. There is a real shift towards our kind of politics, towards back to basics, common sense, honesty. And I want us to build on that reputation that we've got for honesty. And this is why I've said many times that talking about the I word, that difficult issue. I'm on that, by the way. I'm preparing, along with Kat, one of our supporters over in Blackburn, a document that will go on the internet, or on our website, how to talk about Islam when it comes up. But one of the reasons it's such an important issue, and I'm not going to spend a long time talking about it, I will talk about it when we get to it, is because it shows honesty. If you have the integrity and the courage to talk about that, and to tell some harsh home truths about that, then you will win the trust of the public. You will. They'll know you're not lying. They'll know you're not being politically correct. Because if you're not politically correct about this, then you're not going to be politically correct about anything. This is the issue that will really catapult us. And we'll build on that reputation for honesty and make it, and I think Jack suggested earlier, we tell the truth. We are a slogan. Quite simply, our name is absolutely fantastic. We could not have a better name. The movement bit, yeah, I know, it's not great. But we wanted to be able to call ourselves For Britain. So we had to, unfortunately, put up with the movement bit in order to call ourselves For Britain. But it's the best possible name for a political party, especially at this time when we're going into all this. It's very fractured, it's very polarised politics. And this is perfect. This is For Britain. That's it. That's what we're doing this for. That's what we're standing here for Britain. Simple as that. It's absolutely perfect. And it allows me to say things like vote for Britain, which is just great. Stand for Britain. Do it for Britain. Perfect. Perfect. So I am really excited and I am really grateful. So let me take you through these issues, and I love this as well. I love the 10-point plan. You'll get things. I had one through the through the letterbox recently from the Conservatives. It was like a copy of the Times. You think to yourself, I'm not going to, who is going to sit down and read this? This is perfect. Takes a couple of minutes, less than a minute to read, and you know straight away who you're dealing with. You know straight away. Right, so first one. Leave the EU now, no ifs, no buts, no bills. Quite self-explanatory, but I think that I'm kind of changing on this actually. I started out, after the Brexit vote, I started out thinking there's a strong possibility Brexit won't happen. I've shifted along the line a little bit to, I don't think Brexit's going to happen. I honestly don't. I think it will drag on and on for years, deliberately drag on and on for years. The Eurocrats will continue to drip that little bit of, you can always come back. You can see they're already doing it. I think Juncker said it. Our arms are still open for the UK. This is the kind of insidious dripping of a message into the public mind. And it'll carry on, and the reason is that there's no will on either side. There's no will on either side. They could have shaken hands the day after the Brexit if they were adults, and if there wasn't such hostility, and the hostility is coming from the EU because the EU does not like being defied. It thinks it's in charge of this continent. And any objection, and any show of dissent, especially from a country as important as the UK, they were furious about it, absolutely furious. Now, if they were grown-ups, if we weren't in a dictatorship, a multinational, international dictatorship, which we are still, then they would have shaken hands and said, listen, fair enough, wish you well, we'll continue to trade on pretty much the same terms that we're on, tariff-free, you know, but with the border closed to the UK. Easy, easy. If they were grown-ups with any good intentions, they could have done it the next day. There is absolutely no intention on either side for the UK to leave the European Union. That is where I believe it is now. And it will drag on, and we will probably get that second referendum at some point. And I think, you know, if there is a second referendum, then they're going to throw the kitchen sink out. Like they've done before with different votes held in other countries, you've got to vote again, and then they'll throw whatever they have out. And to intimidate and to frighten people. I don't think it'll work quite as well on the British as it would on some others. I think they've already tried to scare and intimidate, but the British are not very easily scared or intimidated, thankfully. But I think in the longer term, if we want to preserve our culture, our society, who we are, the EU actually has to go. And I think there's a growing feeling across Europe that the EU itself has to go. I know there's a growing feeling across Europe that the EU has to go. I've spoken to a couple of people from other European countries who I've said sort of floated the idea that we need to get together, anti-EU people from across Europe need to get together and inspire the European people to say enough of this monster that is dictating our lives and destroying our countries. We need to, in essence, I think we need to talk bigger about the European Union and think bigger about the European Union. Aim to get rid of it. Why not? Why not? It's creaking now anyway. It's creaking so much that a good enough push will knock it over. We need a Europe-wide push to knock it over, because I don't think, even if Brexit were to happen, and as I say, I don't believe that it will, even if it were to happen, it's not going to solve the problems. It'll help, but it's not going to solve every problem. It's not going to take how many hundreds or thousands of people, for example, are sitting in Calais, jumping on trucks, coming over here. That's not going to change. That's not going to stop because of Brexit. And the reason that's happening is because people are coming through a porous external European border. And that's what we have to start talking about. We have to start talking about the transformation of Europe in the last 5 years. It's been a tragic transformation. These are ancient, old civilizations and societies that have been sitting around for centuries and centuries. And they've been effectively uprooted and dismantled in a few short years. Thanks to Thanks to Angela Merkel opening the doors of Germany to the whole world. And what she brought and what happened was terror attacks on the streets, people being murdered on the streets, The murder rates in Germany are skyrocketing. The murder rates in London are skyrocketing. And it's all because of the porous open border external to Europe. Now, until people really understand that, and understand that this is permanent, this transformation of Europe is permanent, and there have been some shocking scenes. And one thing a lot of people in this country will relate to, I'm one of them, is sitting on a beach in Spain. And one of the most terrifying images I saw during this migrant crisis was people sitting on a beach in Spain and a boat coming in full of African migrants who jumped off and ran on to the beach, and people were like, what the hell's going on? This is crazy. This is crazy. And what's more, it's people's emotions. This is the kind of thing that rattles people's emotions. And we vote with our hearts. We do vote with our hearts. And if we can get through to people that the European Union is a fascist dictatorship, and it is, and everything it does post, and everything it has done post the Brexit vote has proven this. It's proven this. Look at its behaviour after this result. Absolutely shocking. They intend, and they have intended from day one, to take away the voice of the people in European countries. That was always their intention. Was to completely dismantle our identity, dismantle the nation state is probably an obvious one, but dismantle our identity, weaken us. And this is a difficult one to talk about, but I think it's very, very important, and it's one that other parties won't talk about. And it's very important how we talk about it, but we must. I think we must. Is the anti-white sentiment that is absolutely mainstream across Europe is anti-white. And that is aimed at weakening the European peoples and the European nation states in order to essentially reduce us to subservience to this weird hybrid of socialism and corporatism that the European Union is. It is essentially international corporate socialism. It's a weird little hybrid, and that's what it is. But whatever it is, it intends to disempower, completely disempower the people of Europe. And if Brexit doesn't happen, then it's the last nail in the coffin of the vote. The vote has been declared null and void. People need to hear this message regularly, regularly. All you ever hear from all the parties and from UKIP is trade deals. This is all they talk about. This is all they talk about. Now, I understand this is important. These are people's jobs. This is the economy. It's important. But it's not. A lot of people turn off. A lot of people don't want to sit down and listen to big businessmen talking about international trade. I want to reach them where they understand that this is about their children's future, where they understand that this is about whether or not their daughter can go to school and come home from school safely, where that they understand that we are importing en masse. And while the newspapers might not be talking about it as much anymore, thousands of people are still coming into Europe every single day. Thousands every single day. If you look down at the southern parts of Europe, Greece, Italy, the islands around there are being utterly destroyed. The Greek islands, places of mythology, these are ancient, beautiful places, and they're being completely destroyed. This is what we need to talk about. This is what we need to remind people of. And we've got to aim to present a vision, not just to call Theresa May a traitor and then say nothing else, but to present a vision of a future Europe where the European nation state is restored, where the cultures of European nation states are respected and elevated and kept dominant in the public sphere. People can live privately within the law as they wish, but the public space must be reflective of the European majority. That's the future Europe we want. We want to be friends and be neighbours and work together on common things that affect Europe. We'll work together in the best interests of the European people. But we will not give up our countries, and we will not be ruled by an unelected bureaucracy any longer. This is really what is going to get public opinion, enforce public opinion against the European Union. And it is happening across Europe, and I have, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going over twice. I'm going to Belgium and I'm going to France to speak at conferences aimed at just this, getting together groups from around Europe whose aim big, whose aim is to bring down the European Union. That is how I think we need to talk about it. And we will reach far more people than talking about big business. I think a lot of people are put off by it. Significantly reduce immigration and deport illegal immigrants. Any sane society would not be allowing masses of illegal immigrants to live in the country. If your first contribution to a country is to break its immigration laws, it's not a good start. It's not a good start, and it doesn't show a great deal of respect for the law of the land. Now, I'm not devoid of compassion. I understand that some people are in terrible dire straits, and I would never have a sort of a blanket. There are going to be people who desperately need help, and we cannot be without compassion. But we're not the saviour of the world either. We owe no duty to save the whole world and destroy ourselves in the process. We must have, now we're going to, as a party, when the May elections are over, one of the first things we're going to do is start asking the members to vote on specific policies. One of those will be an immigration policy. What exactly will our immigration policy be? And we'll come up with a couple of options and I'll ask members to vote on it. What are we getting now? A city the size of Coventry or bigger every single year? How can we possibly sustain this? This is insanity. This is insanity. And it's even more insane that I'm not allowed to talk about it without being called an extremist and a racist. Let me tell you what is really extreme. Extreme is wanting to open the borders of a relatively small island country and allow unlimited people from God knows what kind of societies, what kind of educational backgrounds, what kind of culture, what kind of belief, what kind of practices, and just allow countless numbers to come live here. This is insane. This is insane. And it's an extremely extreme political view. Wanting a moderate, fair immigration system that is based on the best interests of the British people, remember that? That's a sane, moderate policy. Wanting open borders is an extreme position. But we're in an Orwellian 1984-esque world where the sane has been declared insane and the insane has been declared sane. And we are living in insanity. This is insane. This is crazy. This is crazy. So like I said, we'll put the exact policy to the members after these May elections, but my own view is that there must be a freeze. There has to be a freeze. And that doesn't mean a travel freeze. And you know, if you're going to talk to journalists about this and you say there must be a freeze on immigration for say 3 or 5 years, they'll immediately go, oh, there's not going to be anyone coming in, oh, what are you going to do, close down Heathrow, this kind of rubbish. We're not talking about travelling. We're talking about people coming here to live here, permanently. That's what we mean by immigration. So we're not talking about tourism or business travel. We're talking about people coming to live here. And there must be a freeze on that. I would suggest perhaps a 3 or 5 year freeze. And during that time, whatever resources would go in to immigration and to controlling immigration, processing immigration, will instead go into finding out who is in this country right now, who has no right to be here, and sending them back to where they came from. I'm sorry it sounds harsh, but it's true. The British do not owe the world anything. And actually on that's largely why it's happening. You know, people are coming here from Africa thinking the British owe them. They do. They'll come here saying, well, they were colonised half the world, so they owe us. No, we don't. Owe you absolutely nothing at all. And we certainly don't owe you a house and benefits while you go out and commit crimes against the British people in our streets. We owe you nothing. We owe you nothing at all. So 5 years will be spent finding out who is in this country and removing people who have absolutely no right to be here. And if we don't know where they're from, well, again, this sounds harsh, but a lot of people, as we know, came here during the Merkel craze, throwing any papers or passports or whatever they had into the sea, knowing that if we don't know who they are, where they come from, we can't send them back. Well, there's one point. One, you can't migrate here unless we know where you're from. We should be taking nobody we can't deport. Nobody we can't deport. And any violent crime, not talking about a parking ticket, but a violent crime, and it's out permanently. And I don't care what's going on in your country. I don't care what risks you run. You did this to yourself. If you commit a violent crime against somebody in Britain, you caused whatever the consequences are yourself. I'm sorry, we have to stop being so pussyfooting around violent criminals and pretending they're victims who need our protection. No, the British people need our protection, and that's who we should be working for. So after that 5 years, I would have a point system. I guess is the sanest, most workable way. But we have to widen it a little bit. We have to widen the criteria a little bit. So I wouldn't do, I mean, Nigel Farage was regularly talked about Australia's point system. And when I would hear him saying this on TV, I would say, Nigel, have you seen Australia lately? The immigration to Australia is doing to Australia what it's doing to Europe, what it's doing to the US, what it's doing to Canada. It's destroying it. They've got all the same problems in Australia because they're importing a hostile, completely incompatible culture from a hostile, completely incompatible part of the world. So a point system, fine. But on that point system, I want us to use our brains, use our common sense, and think about what those points should be. So it's not all about economics. We know this. We know that to the British people it's not all about economics, because if it were, they wouldn't have voted for Brexit. People care about more than economics. So it's not all about economics. I want us to look at the culture of the country from which the person wishes to come. And then I want us to use our common sense. So if we take female genital mutilation for an example, Somalia, 98% of Somalis mutilate their daughters, 98%. Now, FGM carries a 14-year prison sentence under British law, or it would if anyone was ever punished for it. So why with this? And when you talk to journalists, ask them this if they get onto this stuff. Why would you knowingly allow immigration from a society where 98% of them practice a serious criminal offence in your country? Why would you do it? If you have a country which has serious criminal practices as its mainstream culture, you do not open your doors to that country, because two things are going to happen if you do. You will either put all your police resources into investigating and trying to bring this crime under control, or you just let it happen because you don't have the resources to police it. And that's what we're doing now. We're just letting it happen because we don't have the resources. If the police went after FGM, they'd do nothing else. And then you have, the result of that is that the rule of law breaks down. There is no law. The law of the land becomes absolutely meaningless. It becomes, you have a fractured society where only some people are punished more than other people. And what that does is actually break up the British state itself. If British law is not paramount in any part of Britain, then you are seeing the fracturing of Britain itself. That is the end result. You simply cannot mix oil and water. It won't work. That is the kind of thing I want us to do in a post-5-year freeze immigration policy. There have to be some countries that just say no. We can't. It's unfortunate for people who are in them that we can say, people say, well, there are people that we need to help. There are ways of helping people that don't involve destroying your own society. Why have we decided that we need to help them more than we need to look after ourselves? We come first. I'm sorry, we do. And if every country, if every government looked after its own people first, then the world would be a far better place. So we come first. And I also want us to talk about refugee and asylum. There is a legal definition of asylum seeker. And you can bet that about 80% of asylum seekers in Europe now don't meet it, or come anywhere close, because the law means nothing. The law means absolutely nothing. We have to make the law mean something again, including on asylum seekers and refugees. And if they are asylum seekers and refugees, and we do decide to help them, then once hostilities have ended in their own country, then we help them to go back home again. This is how it must be done. You can't give up your compassion completely, but the British people come first. And it's as simple as that. And even if even if you are a refugee and an asylum seeker, gives you no license to commit crimes in this country. Commit crimes when you're out, asylum seeker or not, is my view. So I think across, I think the British public will get on board with these messages. It's tough, but it's fair, and above all, it puts Britain first. And people want that. The British people are quite cowed. It comes from years of indoctrination. I'll get onto that in a minute. Years of anti-British indoctrination, that the British people feel almost weakened by this, and I think the British self-confidence is so low, publicly at least. It's still in there, the lion is still roaring, and we'll bring it back out. But there is a reluctance to put ourselves first, but that has to change. That has to be a strong message. We will help people who deserve and need help, but we will not do it at our own expense, and we will not do it at the expense of the safety and well-being of the people of this country. It's as simple as that. It's fair, it's compassionate, but it puts us first, and it's what the British people want. It's what the British people want. End politically correct policing, one law for all. This is shocking. This is shocking, and it just keeps getting worse. You sort of feel like you're in some. Do you remember Tales of the Unexpected? am I showing my age now? I am, aren't I? No. But it does. It's just getting weirder and weirder, and weird is the word. It's like we've gone down the rabbit hole here when it comes to policing. It's crazy. I say the word insane and crazy over and over again because it's the only one that fits. It's the only one that fits. Let me give you an example, and this example, it blows me away far more than other people, I think. I sort of say it to people, and I'm waiting for them to go, and I think, you're not as shocked as I am. You might have heard this story about, we all know, first of all, what's happening in London. It's stabbing, we've beaten New York for the first time ever for murder rates in London, in Sadiq Khan's London. London is now second only to Bangladesh for acid attacks. Second only to Bangladesh. Electoral fraud is absolutely rife in London, absolutely rife, as it is, I suspect, in other parts of the country as well. Another issue we need to start talking about is getting electoral reform moving. Get rid of the postal vote for a start. I'm veering off a little bit, but I will. Get rid of the postal vote for a start. This is a recipe for corruption, which is why Labour likes it so much. Because you can vote 25 times for Labour and be an illegal immigrant, and anyone can vote. Anyone can vote. It's crazy. You're supposed to be a British citizen to vote in the general election. Who checks? Who checks? Nobody checks. They hand out voting polling cards like confetti. Nobody cares. It's an absolute joke. Anyway, let me get back to policing and to the story I was going to tell. There is a crime wave in London, now a real crime wave. Murder, rape, everything is up, and rising by 10, 20, 30% under Sadiq Khan, who continues to get away with it. He just continues to get away with it. This I don't know why, it's this smarmy little grin he's got. He's getting away with these things. And he's getting away with it. We all know why he's getting away with it. He's got a hell of a lot of PC points on his card, hasn't he? That's why he's getting away with it. But we have a real crime problem in this country. And in London specifically, while the murder rates and the acid attack rates shoot through the roof, there are 900 hate crime officers in London. And all Sadiq Khan does is talk about Tory cuts. Now he's right. He's right. The police have been decimated. Police have been decimated. I saw a tweet on Twitter today from the Downing Street Cat. The Downing Street Cat has its own Twitter account, and it tweeted that I'm not saying police numbers are dangerously low, but I've just been rotated on to the security team. So pretty much, everyone knows that the police have been decimated, and they shouldn't be. Policing should be a priority for any government, and a top priority at that. So if we haven't got resources for police, well, let's take resources from somewhere we don't necessarily need quite as much as policing does. 900 hate crime officers. while the murders go through the roof. Absolutely insane, and I'll say it again, it is absolutely insane. But another story I wanted to come on to, I wanted to mention, the one that blows me away, is the child at the school. I'm sure some of you have heard me tell the story before. A child at a school who identified as the other gender. I can't remember what age, they're still a nipper. And of course nippers now can choose their sex, apparently. And one of the teachers in the school refused to call this child by the other sex's pronouns. And the school called the police because this teacher was, I still can't get over it. But when you stand back and look at it, and you think, look at where we are. Real crime is gone crazy, and the police don't turn up, and the police will tell you, there's no shame in this. No, we're not going to bother with burglaries and assaults anymore, we don't have the resources. But when a school teacher calls a child she instead of he, or vice versa, the police are called. The police, and they come. They don't go to a burglary, but they'll come to a school because the kid has been misgendered. Misgendered? Where did that word come from? And then when they arrived at the school, they phoned the Crown Prosecution Service to check if a crime had been committed, and yes, it had. The CPS confirmed that a crime had been committed in this school. This is crazy. This is nuts. We have got to fight back against this stuff. This is really, a society can't survive this kind of madness for long. We either push it back now, or we're gone. We're done for. We're done for. This is crazy. So there has to be a complete culture shift in the police. There has to be a complete culture shift in the police. It is a politically correct, diversity-obsessed nightmare. Nightmare. They spend most of their time, from what I can see, on Twitter, telling people what they are and are not allowed to tweet, while, as I say, rampant crime goes on around them. We have to get rid of the bosses. We have to get rid of the bosses. In my experience, and I've had a few dealings with the police, not as it sounds, not as it sounds, fortunately. Not yet, anyway. I've had a lot of dealings with the police over the last few years, and they're on our side. The bobby on the beat is on our side. They really are. And you just know it. You know by their interaction with you. A couple of them over the years have said to me, I agree with you, I agree with you. And you know I can't say anything, but you're right. When I've been talking, I did a talk in Milton Keynes, and I referred the whole way through it to the religion that cannot be named. And I could see the police laughing. They're with it, they get it. And it must be a terrible job for them, because they join the police to fight crime and to sort of contribute something to society, and they end up going to a school because a child has been misgendered. It's completely crazy. The bobbies are not the problem. The problem is the common purpose trained, and if you don't know what common purpose is, it's a sinister little hard left Freemasonry that trains public sector leaders in political correctness. It is essentially a brainwashing tool. It would be absolutely at home in the Ministry of Truth. It's quite an extraordinary thing. And it dominates the police. It dominates the higher echelons of the police. The Commissioner of the Metropolitan Police, for example, is a common purpose graduate. And everyone knows it. I think the Daily Mail did a really good scoop on this a few years ago, actually. And you'll find that leading figures in the police, the Crown Prosecution Service, the NHS, across the board, are common purpose. This is a sinister organisation, and most of the country doesn't even know it exists, and yet it is having a profound impact. So common purpose must be exposed and swept out of the public sector entirely. Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Replace them with sane people who have respect for the law of the land and who have respect for the concept of criminal punishment. Because to me, the left has so dominated this, and their skewed so-called morals are so steeped. It's dripped in so much that we have a situation now where the victim of a crime is treated as almost on an equal par with the perpetrator of a crime. You know, they're both, well, you know, he's a victim too. He had a hard life. Well, this is fine, but that doesn't stop us punishing them. It's about the victim. It's about justice for the victim. And it's about restoring responsibility in society and providing moral clarity as to who is a victim and who is a perpetrator, because they completely blur the lines between the two. And you'll see that happening, particularly in the basket case that Sweden is becoming now. You can see that very obviously. It's less pronounced here, but it's still the same philosophy. I remember where there was a girl raped in the school, and the principal actually said, well, the rapist is a victim too. And they really believe that, and that's the kind of thinking that has seeped into policing. And there's no longer any emphasis on criminal punishment. That has to be restored. I want, also on a more practical level, I would like us to put in place a system where local people can sack chief constables because they deserve to be sacked, and I think it should be the people who sack them, because we can't trust the establishment we know that nothing happened. I mean, look at Rotherham, nothing happened to them. They're all still in their jobs. They'll also take away fat pensions, and they did absolutely nothing while a terrible crime was committed under their nose. They should not be in jobs. They shouldn't be collecting pensions. They should be out on their ear, made an example of at least. And any leading police officer will know that if you allow this to happen, the people can get rid of you. The people can get rid of you. There must be, for each area that has a chief constable, say, a equivalent or a mirror committee of some sort. I know it sounds bureaucratic, but it's, unfortunately we have to do these things, of local citizens to whom that chief constable is directly answerable, and that they have the power to sack. That they have the power to sack. Just imagine the difference in atmosphere, the difference in policing culture it would introduce if local people could actually sack these chief constables for not doing their job. It would be absolutely wonderful. But we must restore sanity to the police as a matter of urgency, and we must restore actually police numbers as well as a priority. End public sector waste, defend services, and protect the NHS. I'm very pro NHS, and I always have been. I've worked in it for many years, and I've seen a large. I think I can sum up the problems. Well, no, 3 words. I can sum up the problems in the NHS: waste, lack of accountability. I think I'll leave it at those because I've forgotten the other one. Waste and lack of accountability are the top. This is the waste in the NHS is absolutely obscene. It is obscene. That thing hemorrhages money because it's being run by people who don't know what they're doing. And there was a shift in the 90s. The late 90s, early 90s, Blair years. There was a shift in the NHS. And what it had been, it had been run by the doctors. The doctors were in charge, and they knew what they were doing because they were doctors. And they were the ones who knew what medical treatment was needed. They were the ones who knew they were the best decision makers in a hospital. And I used to work in it during that time, and I was a PA to a lead clinician. And so she would go to all the big board meetings and things, and I would go with her. So I used to sit in on a lot of these meetings, and where they're making decisions. And there were times when I sat and just shook my head in complete disbelief at some of the decisions they made. And you could see I think essentially what happened was a class war took place in the NHS during the Blair years, where it was these well-off Oxford and Cambridge doctors. How dare they? Let's take their authority away and replace them with bureaucrats who haven't got a clue what they're doing. And you could see the authority being taken away from the doctors first of all, and then you could see the standards dropping and dropping and dropping and dropping, and they've been dropping since because the people who are running the NHS they are bureaucrats. They create more of themselves. They exist essentially for their own. It's like a circle. They exist only because they exist, and they hire more because they exist, and they hire more because they exist. I think it's only 48, oh no, sorry, it's the other way around, 52% of the NHS is actually medical. The rest of it is layer after layer after layer of bureaucracy. And it's a shocking waste, and not only bureaucracy, but incompetent bureaucracy. When the Tory Lib Dem coalition restructured the NHS, I saw many examples of this. People going away with six-figure redundancy packages and then being rehired again the next week. This happened over and over and over again. And you would see as well chief executives, hospital chief executives. I remember one example in a hospital I worked in. The chief exec's office used to be downstairs in the hospital with everyone else. Suddenly it wasn't good enough, and we had to go out. This was in Fulham, in London, by the way, one of the most expensive parts of the country. They had to go out and get a shiny, bright, new office for this chief executive because suddenly the ground floor of the hospital wasn't good enough anymore. How are we putting up with this? How are we putting up with this? They live the life of kings and queens, these big chiefs in the NHS. Meanwhile, you and I are sitting in A&E for hours on end, waiting to be treated, while they're getting expensive trips and expensive offices. And it's absolutely obscene. It's absolutely obscene. We do need a complete audit, I would suggest, of the senior levels of the NHS. An audit. It's going to cost money, yeah. And immediately people will say, oh, that's just more bureaucracy, more. But look, if we do it right and we do it for a long-term gain, then it has to be done. In the end, you will save a lot more money, but there must be an audit. I want to know what chief executives are earning, what they're doing, what their budgets are, and what they're spending it on. I want to know this, and I want the people to know this as well. And like the police, I want local people to have the ability to remove hospital chief executives if they run their hospital into the ground. It is a scandal that a chief executive can run a hospital into the ground such that it's closed down and they still just go to another seriously well-paid job at another hospital and pay no consequence whatsoever for the fact that they ran a hospital into the ground and left local people with nothing. Absolutely shocking and disgraceful, and it should not be happening. Other issues with the NHS include, of course, health tourism. And health tourism is when a person, and I saw this many times as well, a person comes from another country just to be treated in the NHS and then goes home. Costs the NHS about £2 billion a year, which in its overall budget of about £116 billion. Do you know the NHS? I didn't know the NHS budget was quite that big, but it is. It's a drop in the ocean of £116 billion. But it's still £2 billion we could be better using on treating British people. Let's put that £2 billion into a few A&Es across the country. But it is scandalous, and it's once again the NHS is run by lefty bureaucrats who are largely too lazy, actually, to charge people. And I've seen it. I remember one instance, an Australian woman trying to pay for the treatment that she received. She was a tourist, and she was trying to pay and they wouldn't take it. I knew of a guy as well. I worked in a HIV clinic, and I knew of a guy who was a regular, but he lived in the US, and if you're well with HIV, you can go for 6 months at a time without seeing a doctor. And he would come over every 6 months, see his doctor, pick up 6 months worth of his drugs and fly back. And he was not the only one. And of course the reason is that it's cheaper to fly than it is to buy the drugs in the US. And this is happening. This is happening a lot. This is happening a lot. It's making a joke. It's making a joke out of us. The whole world must be laughing at us for so many reasons. But this is really shocking. And the British taxpayer is under no obligation whatsoever to provide healthcare for the whole world. It's not fair. It's not fair, and it has to be reined in. And we have to introduce a system of, I would suggest, on the plane health insurance. You have to. When I went to Australia, that's what you had to do. You fill it in on the plane, and you have to pay for your health insurance. It's as simple as that. And why can't we do that? Why can't we do that? And if people don't have health insurance or can't pay for treatment, then who let them into the country? Who let them into the country? They should pay. They should pay. This is really scandalous, and it has to stop, and waste across the public sector in general has to stop, including local government. You know, I would love us to make an issue of, if you can, and I know there are, if not all of the candidates in the room at the moment, find out how much the chief executives of Leeds City Council are earning, and tell people. You'll find that a lot of them are on 6 figures, and doing sod all, and the public know it, So that local government message is replace these people. Put people into your local council who aren't just there because they think they own the place. And you'll find this with Labour. Labour are so complacent in places like Leeds and other parts of the north of England, so complacent, and they treat it like their little fiefdoms. They treat this like they treat the council like they own it. They don't. Let's kick them out of it. We really can. Let's kick them out of it. And you know, people need to know how much of their money is being spent, and they're getting absolutely nothing at all for it. And it's especially heartbreaking in places like Rotherham and Rochdale and other notorious grooming gang spots, that the local government is still, or not in Rotherham because it's been replaced, but across the country in similar circumstances, chief executives still taking home often 6 figures, while crime is going on under the nose and nothing happens. Has to stop. And this will be a really popular message with people as well, because they know, they can see that these council executives are useless, you know, and still getting a fortune. It's what the left-wing media would call a populist message. Fine by me. Well, since when was being popular a bad thing in politics? Let's be popular. Let's be populist. I have absolutely no problem with that. End excessive red tape and encourage trade. Now this applies across various different levels. I think if we talk about international trade, most of us would like to see, if not tariff-free, then as uncumbersome as possible. But to bring it down to some more community, more local level, I would like to see a revival of high streets, and I would like to see a revival of small businesses on high streets. Part of the reason is community spirit. Community spirit. When you have nothing but corporate giants on your high street, it doesn't feel the same. There's no variety. There's nothing. You know, it's very little interesting. I want us to be the party of small business, definitely supporting of small business, and to unrestrain creativity and entrepreneurship as much as we possibly can. Let's support small business people who want to get up and do something. You know, when someone in a society says, I really want to go out and do this, we should be encouraging them. We should be doing all we can to help them. Or at least making it as easy as possible and cutting back some of the health and safety regulation, for example, has to go. You know, we are really stifling people with silly, cumbersome regulations that are really not needed, and that applies across the board, in big economics and small economics. We really ought to be doing that. There are common sense things we can do as well. We can, parking charges, for example. If we got rid of some of the parking charges, especially in smaller towns, that you might just revive a little bit of business on your high streets. You might bring people back out onto the high streets and create a village or a town again, rather than just a mirror image of the few with boots and WH Smith and that's it. And another reason, and I think talking to people about this would go down quite well actually, is the consumer. The consumer suffers when big business is in charge. Because if and I've seen this, and I'm not that old, I've seen this really change in my lifetime. The consumer care of all kinds is completely gone, and it's gone because they have so many customers. They don't care. You know, you turn around to a massive company and say, well, I should take my business elsewhere. They'll say, bye. What was your number again? You know, there's no personality in our local communities, and I would like to see that restored. And I think small common sense measures like cutting back business rates or cutting back parking charges and encouraging giving tax breaks, for example, to small business, local small business, to try and get people off the ground and bring a bit of spirit, a bit of life back to our towns and villages would be very popular with local people. Planning is another one, of course. I think there should be referendum on major planning issues. And if the people don't want them, you know, the establishment as it is now would never go along with this. They would never go along with people having a vote on major development in their area. Because they know a lot of occasions people won't vote for it. They'll want to keep the identity of the town or village in place. So the establishment will never ever go for this. But it would be a fantastic lesson, because if people voted not to have things built in their area, then it simply can't be built. And then they'll have to move on somewhere else, and they won't be allowed to build there either. And it would be a very strong message to national government that we're tired of this. We're tired of you dismantling everything we know. We're not going to have it. And it would be and it's a very powerful thing. It's a very powerful thing. And if people have a real say over what happens in their local area, it would be very empowering. We might get a bit of self-confidence back as well, and maybe a little bit of democracy along the way. End foreign aid except in emergencies, pretty self-explanatory. People are tired, really, really tired, of sending billions abroad to Lord knows where half of it ends up. It's not even traced. This is again the craziness of it. We're just spending billions, and we don't even know where a lot of it is going. We know it's ending up in the pockets of dictators, you know, in Africa and elsewhere, offshore bank accounts, the whole lot. So a lot of people getting very, very rich off our benefit, or off our foreign aid, while NHS nurses are having to use food banks. While NHS nurses are using food banks to get by, we're sending billions to countries that haven't had their own space program. I mean, this is not. No sane society would be doing this, and no society that puts its own people first would be doing this. Of course, we will help in emergencies. We are a country with a heart, and we will stay that way. But this automatic transference of billions of pounds out of this country is a disgrace, and really needs to stop. And you say that to people, and who's going to disagree with you? Very, very few people will disagree with that. It's nice and simple. It's totally on message. We come first. Okay. So go to the exciting one. Speak truthfully about Islam and its impact in Britain. This is absolutely key. As I mentioned at the start, this is absolutely key. No one else is going to do this. No one else is going to do this. No one that can be taken seriously. I mean, and I think we are taken seriously. We will be taken more seriously as we go on. UKIP's not going to do this. I very much don't want to say much about UKIP, but I do have to clear up the Gerard Batten fiasco. Gerard Batten, yes, feels very similarly to me about Islam, but he is not going to make it a campaigning issue for UKIP at any point. I can absolutely guarantee you that. And I know this for several reasons. One, because I've known Gerard for some time, but I also know it because he is now saying the same things about this issue that were said to me when I was in UKIP, which was, we know you're right, but it's the way you say it. We shouldn't be saying it like that. You need to tone it down a bit, you need to rein it in a bit. No, we don't. No, we don't. Because the way we say it is exactly what people want to hear. There is no pussyfooting around this issue. If we want the public to trust us, this is how to do it. We will not engage in PC soundbites about this or anything else. We will not do it. And the way, you know, the way I talk about things is the way we talk about things. It's the way people talk about things. You know, and we mustn't fall over ourselves every 5 minutes to say not all Muslims, or it's like a tiny minority of this nonsense. We'll tell it like it is, and we will tell it exactly. We will tell exactly what is written in the scriptures. We will tell exactly what the practices are and where they come from. And we will tell exactly that, yes, we realise that only a small minority of Muslims support terrorism, it is not a small minority that support things like child marriage, or indeed grotesque punishments like death by stoning. Across the world, in many countries, vast majorities of Muslims believe in these things. We are not talking about a different country, we're talking about a different century. We are talking about people who simply have not been through the last 500, 600, 700 years of history that Europe has been through. That is a simple fact, and you cannot do it. But what I want people to know is, I want us just to place the facts on the table. Let's place the facts on the table, and then let the people decide. Because at present, the public is being lied to and lied to and lied to about this issue, and being fed PC soundbites. And I'll come back to Gerard Bratton very briefly. The second message that is coming out from him now is, we are not against the people, we're against the ideology. Now, this is palpable nonsense, and if you think about it for so much as a second, it will immediately become apparent that this is nonsense. Ideologies do not kill people. People kill people. Little one from America, from the gun debate in America. Stolen a little phrase from the gun debate in America. An ideology, if we take Islam as the obvious example, an ideology in this sense is a book. And a book sits on a shelf and does no harm. The Quran itself, although it is full of messages of war and conquest and commands Muslims to subject the world to their dominance and to subject the world to Sharia, and it does that over and over and over again. But that's just a book on the shelf. And until people take that book down off the shelf, read it, and put it into action, that's when the trouble starts. So the ideology is not the problem. The people who follow the ideology are the problem. And here's the thing that UKIP or anyone else doesn't want to face. Until you cannot stop an ideology entering your country, unless you stop the people who hold that ideology entering your country. I'm sorry, there's no little get-out clause, there's no little easy way around this. This is about people, and we're going to have to keep people out if we are going to keep this ideology out. It's as simple as that. And the people are not saints. Let's remember this. People are not saints. The executioner is a person. The jihadi, they're people. ISIS are people. People are not saints. The Nazis were people. We can't just say, oh, they're people, so we must... No. People can be very, very nasty. And they can bring very, very nasty things. So let's not go down this politically correct route. We will tell the truth about this religion, about what it teaches, about what its impact has been in this country and what it will be in the future. And there will be no easy solution to this. We are not going to live happily side by side. It's not going to happen. It's never happened once in the history of Islam. It's not going to happen now. So we either move very quickly to stop the immigration, to deport jihadis who are not British citizens, and if they are, these 3,000 jihadis, for example, that are on the streets, 23,000 is actually but there are 3,000 specifically that are being watched by the security services. Why are they on the street? I guarantee you, I don't know this for a fact, so don't quote me, but instinct and experience tells me that I bet you a lot of those 3,000 are not even British citizens. And yet they're still in this country on benefits, and while they present a threat to us. Why? Why? Get rid of them. Get rid of them. Any of these jihadis who promote Sharia and they are not British citizens, throw them out. Throw them out. End of story. And if you don't know where to send them to, then hold them in detention until they tell you where they would like to be flown back to. We have to start removing them. We also have to start shutting down the Sharia courts. There should be no Sharia courts, not a single solitary Sharia court in operation in this country. And they are courts. And the PC crowd will tell you they're only Sharia councils. They're nonsense. They operate as courts. They look like courts. They sound like courts. And they are indistinguishable from Sharia courts in Saudi Arabia or Iran. And that's the truth. They haven't got the criminal element. Not that they don't want it. Believe me, they're not stoning people to death, but not because they don't want to. And the long-term aim is to stone people to death.
And now you're getting white people summoned to Sharia courts around here. And when they get there, they're finding fully uniformed Muslim police officers sat there taking notes.
We've got to talk about that afterwards. You've got to tell me all about that. I want to write about that. Wow. So, you know, look, even if we have to close them down by force, we should close them down. There are mosques in this country who were caught by ITV cameras, and this isn't that long ago, agreeing on camera, on hidden camera, to forcefully marry underage girls. Those mosques are still open, the imams are still in them. The consequence of this was one imam was sacked and he was back 2 weeks later. Those mosques should have been shut down and the imams thrown either in jail or out of the country permanently. This is shocking. This is shocking. And we will enforce the law. And there are two things we need to do regarding Islam. One is stop the immigration. Two is enforce our laws. If we enforce the law, if we made Islam subject to our laws, we would get rid of the nasty bits of it anyway. And that's all we need to do. And that's what the message has to be. We just want to enforce the law. Racist to want everyone to live under the same laws? Racist to want to protect little Somali or Pakistani girls? How is that racist? This is absurd. This is absurd, and this is what you tell them. This is what you tell them when they come at you with this stuff. And then accuse them of being racist. Because they're the ones who want separate standards for different groups of people. They're the racists. They're the ones who don't care if a Pakistani girl is forced to marry some old man. They're the racists. It is they who are doing wrong here. It is they who are deeply, deeply immoral. We want to stand up for children, especially children who are grotesquely abused in these places. And we want to stand up for them all. If you don't care about the little Somali girl or the little Pakistani girl, then you're the racist. Tell them this. Tell them this. You were completely wrong for them. By them, I mean journalists, by the way, or a general social justice warrior, do-gooder, the do-gooder. So tell the truth. We'll tell the truth. And as I said, there's going to be something on the website very soon. Myself and Kat are writing it between us. How to talk about Islam. It goes through pretty much every standard, ridiculous, completely meaningless once you think about it for 2 seconds, soundbite that they come out with. We've pretty much we've thought of a lot of them, but it'll include things about the Quran. After every terror attack, for example, you'll be told the Quran says that if you kill a single human being, you kill a lot of mankind. The guide will tell you how to talk about that because it's a lie. It's a great big lie. The Quran does say that. But in the middle of that quote, in the middle of that verse, it says, unless for a life or for causing corruption in the land. So if you kill a human being, unless they cause corruption in the land, then it's like you've killed all of them. When the politicians and the imams, after every terror attack, come out with this, they leave out the unless for causing corruption in the land. And of course, causing corruption in the land is refusing to obey Sharia. Stuff like this we really, really need to be well versed on. We need to have it at our fingertips for when they come at us with it. So that'll be on the website soon. Some of the people who attended the candidate training will already have received some of it. Protect children from political indoctrination. This is another one I feel really strongly about. And it's absolutely key to the future of this country. If you want to take over a society, if you want to destroy a society, you take over its primary schools. That is where it is done, is in the primary schools. And in primary schools in Britain today, it is all about diversity, diversity, and diversity. It's a multicultural, obsessed, across the board, it's obsessed with multiculturalism. Oh, you have examples. I remember a couple of years ago up in maybe over in Lincolnshire, a kindergarten in rural Lincolnshire was berated by the powers that be for being too white. Too white. What does it do to a classroom of young children to be told there are too many of your skin colour in this room? Imagine the psychological impact it would have And the really concerning psychological impact. If you went into a room and there were a few black kids in it, and you said there were too many black kids in this room, just imagine the impact that has. And it's intended to take away the self-confidence of white people and of British people, to dismantle the self-confidence. Because if you don't care about yourself, you won't fight back. You can subdue a population by taking away their self-confidence, their belief in themselves. They won't fight for what they don't love.
That's what the Nazis did. You know, they're doing just the same thing now.
What's that?
You know, the Nazis did exactly the same thing before the war. Propaganda. It's just the same. They're the ones that's the Nazis, the far left.
Of course. I mean, the Nazis were left-wing.
Yeah.
The Nazis were left-wing, and history was rewritten there as well, to push them over to the far right. Yeah. Because well, post-World War II, nationalism was dismantled because some people blamed nationalism for the war. So the nation-state had to go. And we've been on that trajectory since the end of World War II. But it's in the schools, this is really, really being reinforced, that one, you should apologise for being British. The message going out to British children is your country is responsible for bloodshed and war and oppression and slavery, and that's it. That's all.
So we've done nothing good then. So we've done nothing good in the world then.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
You will not hear them talk about parliamentary democracy. You will not hear them talk about freedom of speech. You will not hear them talk about the trial by jury, the amazing ideas that came out of this country and are still copied all over the world.
I was speaking to a young man the other week, 21 years of age, and I mentioned Winston Churchill. I said, who was that? 21.
I've had a similar experience, actually. I've had a similar experience.
Is that about Hitler, but not Winston Churchill?
Well, of course. I mean, Hitler is used to vilify nationalism. That's why his name comes up so often. I mean, of course he was a monster. Everyone knows he was a monster. But you won't hear as much about Stalin, will you?
Well, no, it was even worse.
Because Stalin was a communist, and communism is now what is essentially, it's put on a wig, disguised itself a little bit, but this is what we're getting. We're getting communism.
How many millions of people did he kill? His own people, how many of those did he kill?
Who? Well,
Stalin, yeah.
I mean, 20 million?
Yeah.
20 million.
I mean, it was worse than Hitler.
But you won't hear it, because Hitler represents, in that mind at least, nationalism, whereas Stalin represents communism. And some people would argue, actually, that we didn't win the Cold War, that the communists did. And actually, it's a very interesting argument, because we do have communist ideas now in the mainstream, and nowhere more so in schools. We're being taught
more Marxists and communists now in the UK than there is in Russia.
Yeah, well, absolutely.
Yeah. And it was promoting that.
Yeah. But that is what we're seeing, and it's widespread in the schools. I would like us to, first of all, get rid of the National Union of Teachers. They have got to go. This is a poisonous little group. And they have somehow got the goal. When a few years ago, when the British values we want to teach British values to children without defining them, I must add, I didn't see any clear definition of what they meant by British values, which in itself is a capitulation. But they were going to, schools were told to teach British values to children, and the National Union of Teachers passed a motion at its national conference saying, no, we won't do it. And they said it was a mark of British imperialism to teach British values to children, and they were instead going to teach children international values. Now, there's no such thing. This is the propaganda, the lie that we're living in. There's no such thing as international values. We're supposed to believe that we have the same values as Saudi Arabia. We are supposed to believe that. With all these things we all have in common. It's crazy. After Charlie Hebdo happened, it is like Tales of the Unexpected. After Charlie Hebdo happened, Saudi Arabia condemned it on the grounds that it violates the values we all share. That came out of Saudi Arabia after Charlie Hebdo. The values we all share? You stone people to death in public squares for entertainment on a Friday night. No.
And I bet that was on the BBC a lot, wasn't it?
What's that?
I bet they were broadcasting that on the BBC all the time.
Most likely.
Yeah,
most likely.
that goes without saying.
But it's the same thing. The same thing came out of came out from Barack Obama at the time. The values we all share. No, we do not share those values. What we need to do is recognise, define what British values are, which are freedom of speech, which are democracy, parliamentary democracy, which is honesty and truth. I mean, our society is built on trust. Our entire contract legal system is all built on trust. We need to be decent in order to function. We cannot introduce this kind of corruption, and the kind of corruption we're seeing, for example, with electoral fraud. That kind of corruption is endemic and standard in many cultures, and now it's coming here. So we need that self-confidence to define who Britain is, and I think it's very much needed and wanted by the British people because we've become all multicultural. There are no absolutes anymore. There are no moral absolutes anymore. There's no moral clarity. We're confused as a country as to what is and isn't moral anymore. Because if we can let people get away with raping little girls in the street, well, there's not much further down we can go. So people don't know what our morals are anymore. And we need to clarify that. We will not have it, that you will rape underage girls in the street. We won't have it. It's unacceptable, and we will punish it. We need clarity, moral clarity. People don't know who they are anymore. We need to get rid of the NUT. We need a national curriculum that reflects what I've just said, and that children will be taught very little, in fact. They shouldn't be taught social, with transgenderism. I'm sorry to keep going back to that. But this should not be taught in schools. This is not a subject for children. This is absurd. This is absolutely absurd. And my own nephew, who is, I think, 14, told me over Christmas that they'd come into his school and told him there were 75 genders. 75. Who came up with that number? Really, who came up with that number? And they were telling them, they're putting all these things up on the board. This is how, and very matter-of-factly. Now, I was relieved that my nephew was laughing at this, and he and his friends were laughing at it at the time. But for how long? For how long were they laughing at it? This has no place in schools. Teachers must keep both their political opinions and their private lives out of the classroom. There is absolutely no place. And children should be prepared in school for self-confidence, self-respect, respect for their community, respect for their country, respect for themselves, and taught to survive in the world, taught to make a living in whatever they are good at, and taught to stand up on their own 2 feet and be productive members of society. Schools should not be there to indoctrinate children into communist ideology, and that's what this is. And there's no more evidence of communist ideology than hate speech. That is communism to the bone. That's old Soviet Russia. That's Soviet Russia, hate speech. And you'll see it more and more. If you say something that is against the consensus, it's immediately hate speech. And then you can argue, but it's free speech. And say, no. Free speech is not hate speech. Hate speech is not free speech. And of course, the establishment or the social justice warrior gets to define what's hate speech and what isn't. This is totalitarianism, and it's very, very dangerous. And kids are growing up believing that it's real. Kids actually think there's such a thing as hate speech. It's not. It's just an opinion that the consensus, that the leaders' consensus doesn't approve of. That's all it is. But it's standard now. People really think that there's such a thing as hate speech. It's really quite shocking. But we have to take schooling very, very seriously. And the message must be that to get back to preparing young children for life as a productive, respectful, working citizen. We need to talk academics and not politics. And we will teach children. We will tell the truth. No society has angels' wings. No society has angels' wings. But no society either has contributed to the world in the way that this country has. And it is time to be proud of it. It is time to be proud of it. If you look at just one example, I think a lot of kids would be really, perhaps quite excited about this, and they certainly won't know about it, is pig sport. And it was invented here. Football is the national game. You've got tennis, cricket, rugby, golf. Do kids know that these are all British games? I don't think they do. These are things that are important. We should be teaching great British writers and thinkers and philosophers and some pride in the history. I would like to see the flag flying outside schools as well. I think that's very important.
Yes,
and defence of the flag. At council, any council that agrees to lower the British flag because some busybody has complained about it should be absolutely ashamed of themselves. It is scandalous.
Well, because of the town halls that have the Pakistan flag flying recently for Pakistan. Not alongside the British flag. The British flag was removed. And that was put up. What does that say to anybody?
It's very symbolic, isn't it? Yeah. Very, very symbolic. I'm surprised I haven't got the Palestinian flag. Has that been flown yet? Probably. It's certainly been flown through the streets of London, I know that. Where are we? Okay, now this policy I think is actually, I mean these are all going to be really popular, but this one is a surprise. This is a surprise popular policy. And no one else is going to touch it with a barge pole. Enhance animal welfare and ban religious slaughter. This is the only time you've clapped. I told you. You say the words enhance animal welfare in Britain and most people say, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. This is an animal-loving country. This is an animal-loving country. And one of the very many things I love about this country is that it is an animal-loving country. The shocking, the law, I can tell you what the law is supposed to be. The law says that an animal must be, first of all, isolated. Animals are not supposed to see each other being slaughtered. It's not, the animal's supposed to know as little as possible about what's going to happen, although you suspect they do. But an animal's supposed to be isolated, and a bolt to the head. And I've seen this, I haven't seen it in real life, I've seen film of it. And the animal does collapse completely unconscious immediately from this bolt to the head. And only then is it slaughtered. Halal and kosher both refuse to stun the animal before slaughter. So they both refuse to obey the law. Now because of the European Union, I need to point this out as well, because of the European Union there's an exemption to the stunning laws in slaughter. And essentially what it does is render the law completely and utterly pointless. Because if the people who want to do it are still allowed to do it, then what's the point of having it? You know, again, common sense. The animals, if we're going to protect the animals from a painful death, then it's halal and kosher you need to protect them from. So what is the point of it? What is the point of it? And we need to say this to people, because people are not stupid. They'll say, yeah, exactly. What is the point of it? So our policy is repeal the religious exemption, get rid of unstunned slaughter, clean up the whole industry. Clean up the whole industry. Let's take animal welfare more seriously and clean up that industry and get rid of unstunned slaughter. And it will, I get a lot of people say, but you're going to be discriminating against religious minorities. And my answer is, okay, let's make this very clear, once and for all. It includes halal and kosher. And you will get people saying to you, oh, well, what about kosher? You're just an Islamophobe. No, kosher goes as well. And there will be religious lobbies who will go crazy about this. We have to stand our ground because the majority is with us. And I, for one, am tired of minorities dictating everything that happens in this country. We treat minorities so much more importantly than the majority. What is that? That's not a democracy. That's not a democracy. We have to be careful not to veer into tyranny of the majority, but this is not an example of that. And our position is very, very clear. We have a clash here between the Jews and Muslims and animal welfare. And let's not be ashamed to say, Animal welfare is more important. And that's our position. So if Jews and Muslims have to get rid of barbaric practices, well, so be it. They'll have to move on. And if they find, quite frankly, that, they change things all the time, why not change this? And if they find that it's unbearable, well then I'm sorry, but the British majority has decided, and if you find that you cannot live with it, I'm sure there are other countries you can live in. It's as simple as that. And we should ban imports of it as well.
Yeah.
We should ban imports of it as well. But there are distinctions, and I think there are important distinctions to be made. Now, kosher has to go as well, as I said, but there are important distinctions to be made between the two. One of them is that while kosher doesn't stone the animal, kosher is not being imposed across the board upon non-Jews. It is not. You still see kosher shops, little kosher shops, which is what it should have been, which is, specifically for Jews, and they have their own sort of little market for this. Still has to go, but it's completely different in terms of scale. The size of the kosher market is nothing in comparison to the size of the halal market. It's completely different in that kosher is not being imposed upon us all. Halal is. And several big companies are only halal now. And people can say, oh, we can boycott them, but the fact is we won't. We won't boycott them. People are not going to do their research and find out who's serving halal and who isn't. It's not a matter of making it letting the market decide, because people aren't aware. So they will still continue to fund the market. So the market will decide to carry it on, actually. We can't let the market decide on this one. But it is halal is in schools, in hospitals, in sporting venues, even across the military. The military now is eating halal. I remember talking to an ex-soldier coming back from a meeting, and he told me that their entire bulk of food that had been brought to them was all halal. What an obscenity that is.
And of course they have to pay a tax, of course, to say that it's halal. Yeah. And that's been proven time and time again to go to fund terrorism.
The certification, and it's not only meat either, this is another important point, it's not only meat. Companies are paying a lot of money to Islamic groups for halal certification. And that money is being siphoned off to Sharia councils and other things. And yes, I can't prove it, so I won't state it as a fact. But you can bet that it's paying for terrorism. Of course it is.
It's been proven going back to the Bali bombing, which was some years ago now, and that was directly linked to the halal certification, because it's a slush fund. Yeah. And Imam Tawhidi,
I know him. Well, I don't know him personally.
Well, he said if he wanted to take control of Britain again, he said you would have to get rid of the Sharia courts and halal certification. He said get rid of those two, and he said you're really onto something, and that's what we need to do. Yeah.
No, I agree. Okay, how long have we got? How long have I been on?
It's 9:15.
9:15. Okay, I'll quickly do the last one. Not because it's not important, but I can do this quite succinctly, because there are specific policies on this one. Support our armed forces is very wide. Let me detail it a little bit. First of all, I think we should double the defence budget. 2% of GDP is not nearly enough. And once again, it's about priorities. We have to defend this country. It may be perhaps top priority of all. How can defence of the nation be low on the list of priorities? It has to be at the very top. If government has any duty at all, it is to protect the nation militarily. Double the defence budget. Raise the pay of serving armed forces. Raise the pay. They deserve to be well paid. To send out 18, 19-year-olds to nightmares like Afghanistan to fight the Taliban in Afghanistan and to Iraq and all these other horrible places on what is effectively minimum wage, I think is shocking and has to stop. We must pay soldiers properly. We must provide them with a home for their families, and we must do everything we can to keep them safe. If you're going to send off mostly young men to potentially die in the door to a foreign country, then you better be doing everything you can in the best interest
and support them when they return, which they often do.
That was what I was going to get on to next. Yeah. When they come, first of all, they should only be deployed in defence of the UK. only in defence of the UK. And second, we all know what the military covenant is. Restore it. And as you say, finally, and this will be the last thing I say, when UK soldiers or other parts of the armed forces, when they are deployed, they will do it only in the interest of the UK, and when they come back, they will have absolute priority over housing and be at the top of any NHS list, including very much including mental health services. They will get any and all support they need permanently. Permanently. It's not for a year. It's not for here's some support for a year, now you're on your own. No. You must be helped into work, you must be helped to recover from the psychological trauma of what they've been through, and it should be the absolute top priority. These are people who put their lives on the line for this country, knowingly put their lives on the line for this country. They deserve respect for it. And we deserve respect for the country will be restored somewhat if we start to respect the armed forces. And the idea that a young British soldier can't or won't go into a pub wearing a uniform, or won't even walk down the street wearing a uniform in Great Britain is an absolute scandal and has to end. I'll end there, and we'll have some. We have a 5 minute break.